No room. All filled up here. Have been for a while. Yes, that's what I said since early this afternoon. There's no room, I'm sorry. No, your offer of extra money is very appealing, but it won't build me another unit, see? Look, I'm already behind schedule. I've got to go and prepare a space for the next occupant. And at this point, time is money. Excuse me. Innkeeping? Gah! They left a mess! I knew that would happen. I have no time for this. Good grief. This happens a lot, you know. I can't get ahead. They weren't supposed to leave their stuff. Oh. You know, I just provide a space. And I'm too busy to deal with matters of these people that are just slobs. They're pigs. I'm not going to have enough time to get ready for the next occupant. I'll tell you what. You understand my frustration, right? I'm trying to run a business here. I have no time. I have no help. And during this time of year, these things are so busy. Blankets everywhere. When I'm camp's fire, I don't provide any of this stuff, you know. Yes, I provide the lodging. I am the innkeeper. But in these days, you bring your own gear. I don't know how it works with operations like yours. I'm sure your hotels and inns are much more lavish. This isn't the Hilton. Oh. I don't know what this dirty cloth was used for, but it brings me back to a time. This time last year, as a matter of fact. It's when the carpenter and his wife came. Things were busy like they are now. They knocked on my door and it was late. I know they had traveled some distance. The husband pled with me. He said, "Sir, we've been traveling for such a long way, and we don't know if we can make it. You see, my wife is going to have a child. She's going to bear a child soon. She can come any minute. And we're just looking for a place to bed down. We're just looking for a place to stay." That would have been great, but I was all filled up. There was no more room. It was a busy time, see. People were coming and going. All of my inns were filled. I had no choice. Everybody was coming to town to register. I had no space. Felt bad for them too, because I heard they were traveling from Nazareth. 60-some miles from Bethlehem. They had all their possessions on them, carrying things on a donkey. Joseph's feet were just tore up from traveling. They both were very, very tired. And they looked at me with just heavy, heavy eyes. And I know that they had traveled so long, and at that, his wife was pregnant. But I had no choice, see? I was just too busy. I was too filled up. I regret that. I can't help but to think about that cloth that they wrapped him in. I feel so guilty. Your lives are busy too, I know. I'm a busy guy as an innkeeper. You see, things aren't today as they were. I'm not a man of many means. I don't make a whole lot of money. But in these times when people come, I am an owner of this inn, and I stay busy in these certain times. All I do is provide a space, folks. Anybody coming or going has to bring their own provisions, their own sleeping stuff, their own blankets, their own food, their own utensils. They've got to bring their own firewood to rest. They've left all of theirs here. What animals, what slobs. And now I'm left to clean up all of this. Provisions weren't great then. Somewhat dirt floors, stone floors. It was just a space. Very, very crude. I did the best that I could, though. I got to say that I wasn't the greatest manager of things either. You know, people like me have a bad reputation by the people that hang out here, much like I'm sure some keepers of motels these days are. It was a place of business for us. People come to and fro, traveling on business. And the thing about inns are they were a temporary lodging facility. People would come and go. But now as I think back on that one day and the significance of it all, that child that I knew was coming and I had no room for. Looking back on it now, I know the importance of that time. And if I could just rewind time, if I could just go back to that space, I would have tried harder. I would have done something. But you know, I'm encouraged by the fact that most of us during important times in our lives like to be in a place of comfort, a place of familiarity, a place that we call home. But you know what amazes me as the innkeeper? To understand on that first Christmas, as you all celebrate, that first Christmas came at a place that was unfamiliar, a place away from home. Most of us travel. Most of us are in business. For me, I run a business. And some of us, I think, can be encouraged as we prepare this season that joy, the source of our joy, the source of my joy that day, as I learned, came to a place of business, came to a place where people are busy. You know, I see a lot of folks, people coming and going, government officials, Roman soldiers, people on work and leave that have traveled quite considerable distances. They come and they go, they take care of business. But I'm amazed that Christmas and the source of our joy came to those busy folks. Even the most disreputable businesses. I'm privy to that. As the innkeeper, I see a lot. I don't know a whole lot of people personally. I'm trained to stay out of the private matters of people. All I do is provide a space. And so I know that there are things that go on in my inn that are disreputable. People not only come temporarily as a point of business, but they also come to do heinous acts. I know during that time when people were coming and going for registration, purposes of taxation, government officials were here, soldiers were here. And when they come to me, even though I might be full and I've got a room available, I have to offer it to them. I have to offer the government officials priority, and so don't the soldiers. And guess what? They stay for free, and it really irks me because they leave such messes, and I've got to clean up after them. And so there are lots of government officials, probably as a matter of bad business, padding their pockets, engaging in very private business matters in these inns. Soldiers as they were, gambling away money, trying to make extra money aside from the stuff that they make. But you know, I stay out of that business. I stay out of their way, even the most disreputable businesses. But you know, I'm amazed, even as a businessman myself, that the source of our joy came to busy folks that first Christmas. People that are away on business, they stay busy. or away from home. And I also know in those spaces that joy comes to very lonely folks too. I don't know if it's like that for you, but for me and folks traveling on business, it was a very lonely enterprise. Most of us know that if we're traveling salespeople, whatever we're selling, we know that to be away from home, to be in business away, at the four walls of an inn or a hotel room like this, can be the living definition of loneliness. But that child that was so special, that is so special, who was wrapped in dirty rags and swaddling clothes, the Christ child, came not only to a place of business, even the most disreputable business, but also to those who are very lonely as well. I don't know about you, but if you've ever been to an inn, if you've ever been to a hotel for Christmas, you know that they try really hard as they decorate. Christmas trees everywhere, decorations, some music plays. It's almost as if they try really hard to be cheerful because the staff too are away from their homes. But even though it's a crowded place and people come to and fro with their places of business, we all know that it's a very lonely place. Even though it's crowded, no friendships are made, not in mine at least. Maybe not some of the hotels that you visit on very busy holidays. And so I'm reminded that this time last year, that child that represented the Messiah, that was the Messiah, came to my door, came to a life of a busy person, involved himself even in the lives of those who were engaged in the most disreputable businesses. And I think it's a reminder to us too that Jesus, as I know him and learned about him, never stayed away from those shoddy areas, those disreputable places, folks that engaged in dirty businesses. In fact, he could be found in their midst. What joy, what hope, what peace is brought to those people who find themselves away from home in an inn like mine, in such disreputable living quarters, very, very meek and meager accommodations. To even though know that they were busy, joy still comes to a place of business. Joy still comes to those folks who are away from home, who are lonely. I think it's amazing, as I've learned about this world that I find myself in, that even though we become more populated and more crowded and more close together, it doesn't necessarily make us closer in relationship. Being away from home is a lonely enterprise, and that source of joy comes to even the most lonely. I'm also aware folks come here to engage in their heinous acts. They break rules. Government officials tried to pad their pockets. People come seeking young women to engage in God knows how many extramarital affairs. It's not a great place, but it's my place. I'm involved in it. I'm aware that this cloth, this setting, is a representation that Christmas comes and that Christ child comes even to a world that's busy and lonely, but also in places where people are unavailable. People are so busy. Maybe even folks that don't want to hear that Christmas message, that have their own agendas. I know when there was a knock at my door, it was urgent. Can we come in? Can we come in? My wife is pregnant. We've traveled so far. Can you take us? I was unavailable. And I know that in the stories, I don't say much. All you know about me as the innkeeper was that there was no room, and I guess I am guilty of that. That the source of our joy came not only to places of business, busy people, but also the lonely, far away from home. But it also came to those who were emotionally, physically, and maybe even spiritually unavailable. You see, I was just too booked up. I was just so preoccupied. There were too many occupants. There were too many things that took place, and I couldn't house them. And so that Christmas message, in spite of it, came even to those who were unavailable. I know that we too are somewhat preoccupied with our coming and our going, our places of business, our times of business. Sometimes we don't have room either. But that message of joy, the source of our joy, came nonetheless. I'm amazed that first Christmas came to a hotel. And even though I had no room, it came nonetheless in such meager accommodations. I'm also aware, too, that first Christmas came and that message was communicated to people like me and everybody who stayed in my inn. The Christmas came also to the estranged. Those who were not only busy and engaged in the most disreputable businesses, but also those who were lonely, those who were unavailable, but also those of us who too were estranged, who find ourselves far away from home. You know, in important times in our lives, the last place that we want to be is far away from home. I guess that's why our modern songs say, "I'll be home for the holidays," or "I'll be home for Christmas." Just you wait and see. Some of us are far away, ways away from home. Christmas came to the estranged. And I think it's quite fitting, though, that Christ child came into this world without a home, because this wasn't an earthly home for him. He came from a much higher place, much more significant place. And he came from eternity without a home. Even though I couldn't accommodate him, I had no room for him. Came without a home. And from what I understand in Holy Writ, in Scripture, he prepares a space for me, an eternal home. If I had it to do all over again, folks, maybe I would have made some space. But I can't go back into time. I can't change the past. It is what it is. But nonetheless, that first Christmas came to a place of business, a world full of busy people, a world that was desperately lonely, a world who was unavailable emotionally, sometimes some ways physically and also spiritually. But also Christmas came to those who are essentially homeless, who are estranged. And that child who was wrapped in bands of dirty rags with no provision came without a home to prepare a space for me. I had no vacancy. And I guess the question remains for us in this time. Will you make room? Will you make room in your heart in a world so preoccupied with other things, in a world that's so busy and unavailable? In my time here, I learned of a story about me, in fact. And I guess I'll tell it to you. It's not the most flattering story, but I'm proud of the representation of me that was made. And I want you to hear this story. Maybe you've heard it before, I haven't. But it's about another innkeeper that I'm proud of. He served me well. His name was Wally. Maybe you've heard of Wally. But Wally was 9 that year. He was in the 2nd grade, although he should have been in the 4th grade. You see, Wally was a little slow. He was intellectually disabled. He had some learning disabilities. And most people in town knew that he had difficulty keeping up. He was big and clumsy and slow in his movement and his mind. Still, Wally was tolerated by the kids in his class, all of whom were smaller than he was. But the boys had trouble hiding their disdain and their irritation when Wally wanted to play ball with them, or any game for that matter, in which winning was important. Most often they'd find a way to keep him out, but Wally hung around anyways, not sulking, just hoping. He was always a helpful boy, a willing one, a smiling one, and the natural protector of anyone that got in their way or he felt was being mistreated. So as Christmas time approached, there was a pageant that was being prepared for the school play. Plans were being made and children were being assigned their parts. Angels, shepherds, wise men, Mary and Joseph. And Wally stood by expectantly. And then suddenly, his joy knew no bounds, for he heard the teacher say, "Wally, I want you to be the innkeeper." I want you to be the innkeeper. And the teacher in her mind thought, not many lines. She reasoned, and his sighs would make his refusal of the lodging to Joseph and Mary a little bit more powerful, a little bit more forceful. And so it happened. That night, the partisan audience gathered for the town's yearly extravaganza of beards and crowns and halos, the whole stage full of people, of squeaky little voices. No one on stage or off was more caught up in the magic of the night than Wallace Purdy, little Wally. They said later that he stood in the wings and watched their performance with such fascination. And from that time to time, Miss Lambert, the teacher, had to make sure they didn't wander on stage before his cue. And then came that time when Joseph and Mary were to appear, slowly and tenderly guiding Mary to the door of the inn. And Joseph knocked hard on the wooden door set by a pulled backdrop. While the innkeeper was there and he was waiting. "What do you want?" Wally said. That was his cue. Swing the door open with brusque power. "We seek lodging," Joseph said. "Well, seek it elsewhere." Wally looked straight ahead and spoke vigorously. "The inn is filled. There is no room." "But sir, we've asked everywhere in vain. We've traveled far and we're very weary." And as told, Wally said his line, "There is no room for you in the inn. There's just no room." And Wally looked properly stern. "Please, good innkeeper," the wife Mary said. And Joseph said, "She's heavy with child and needs a place to rest. Surely you must have a small corner for her. She's so tired." Now for the first time, the innkeeper, Wally, was relaxed in his stiff stance, and he looked down at Mary. And with that, there was a long pause, long enough to make the audience know that something was awry. Somebody had forgotten their line. Something wasn't right. And the audience was a bit tense with embarrassment. You know how that goes. Wally just stood there, frozen. And a voice came from the wings. "No, be gone. Say no, be gone," the prompter whispered. "No," Wally said automatically. "Be gone." And so, as instructed, as they practiced, Joseph Sally placed Mary around his arm and laid his head and she laid her head upon her husband's shoulder, and the two of them started to move away. And the innkeeper Wally, though, didn't return inside the inn, however. Wally stood there in the doorway, watching the forlorn couple, and his mouth was open in disbelief, his brow creased with concern, and his eyes filled unmistakably with tears. And suddenly the Christmas pageant became different from all the others. "Don't go, Joseph," Wally cried out. "Bring Mary back." And at that, Wally proclaimed loudly, "You can have my room. You can have mine. Don't leave. Here, take my space." Some people in town thought that the pageant had been ruined. The teacher thought it happened. She was aghast. Yet there are many others, many others who considered it the most Christmas of all Christmas pageants that they ever had. Did Wally ruin Christmas? If I had to do over again, I wish my words would have been different. Like it or not, you and I aren't so different. We're all innkeepers. We all give residence in our lives to people, to pursuits, to things, or perceptions. We're all innkeepers. And this Christmas, the Christ will come. He will come to you personally, in the place of your business, of your busyness, in our lonely spaces, the deep, dark, lonely spaces that we think nobody knows about. And yet that Christ will also come to those who are unavailable, those who are estranged and away from home. Yes, that Christ will come. And as innkeepers, I ask you, as we prepare for the source that is our joy, will you give him room? Will you give him room? I pray for my own sake that'll be the case for you. Amen. I leave this broom with you as a representation of our diligence and our hard work, our busyness, that sometimes makes us unavailable. But I also leave this dirty rag as a reminder of that Christ child that was born into this world without a home. That Christmas came to a hotel. That Christmas came to an inn. That Jesus was born without a home so that we might die with an affirmation, with the promise, the assurance of having one. I leave that with you as a reminder. As we sing our final hymn, I pray if you're one who is preoccupied, that you'll come to this altar rail. And if maybe for the first time you want to be acquainted with that source of joy, not trivial pursuits, not temporary modes of happiness, but if you want to be acquainted with that source of joy, or you know that you've been preoccupied as an innkeeper and have shut Christ out, come to this altar rail as we sing. Make vacancy. Make vacancy. O come, Emmanuel, into our hearts. Will you stand and sing with me? Number 211. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that mourns in lowly exile here. until the Son of God appears. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. O come thou wisdom from on high, and order all things far and nigh. To us the path of knowledge show, and cause in her ways to grow. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. O come, great Lord of might, who to thy tribes on Sinai's height in ancient times one gave the law, in cloud and majesty and awe. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. O come, thou root of Jesse's tree, an ensign of thy people be. Before thee rulers silent fail. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. God, as the song said, let us not be a people. Let us not be a nation as we prepare for this time of Advent, the coming of such profound joy, hope, peace, and love. Let us not be a people who represent a nation that might go down in history for having no room for you. God, we all are innkeepers. We all harbor a space where we let either people or perceptions, ideas, or things preoccupy a space. Let it be so as we leave this place in anxious anticipation for the coming of the Christ, that when the Christ comes and we remember and knocks on the door of our own hearts, we might open and say, please come in. As innkeepers say, take my space, God. Use our lives. Make us one as a church. And we might leave this place to represent your gospel to a world that's so busy, to a world that is so spiritually unavailable, to a world that is so desperately lonely and estranged, away from home. That first Christmas came to an inn, to a hotel, away from home, so that we might die upon our accepting you with the assurance of having an eternal home. Let us leave with that joy. In Jesus' name, amen.